Greetings, Commanders, and glory to mankind. Titan Raijin has officially lost all of its controlled systems, which means that, save truly major surprises, as of Thursday, it will become vulnerable. It is time for our briefing on the assault on Titan Raijin as a result, and we've prepared our briefing to cover 4 items, really. When, as in what is the sequence of events that will lead to the assault on Titan Raijin. Where, as in how to go about the actual location and setup and overall environment surrounding the assault on Titan Raijin. The how, what are the tips and tricks in the latest state of a game regarding Titan bombing and assault on Titans in general. And then finally, what are the things you should know going into this assault as part of our briefing. We'll also end by talking about Titan rewards and what to expect from Titan rewards as a reminder and refresher of what can be expected as to the in-game rewards for an assault on the Titan. So without further ado, let's start with the when. Titan Raijin will become vulnerable after the downtime on Thursday, October 17. That's the early morning in British Standard Time, and even earlier in the day if you're in the US. It's hard to predict exactly how long the assault will take, as that will vary based on the level of community involvement and the effectiveness of the community involvement, but most estimates right now put the duration of the battle somewhere in between 48 and 72 hours. That means that the meltdown of Titan Raijin is predicted to happen sometimes between Saturday morning and the morning of Sunday, as far as, again, US hours are concerned. Like add 8 hours if you, or 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours if you're in Europe instead, and obviously do the opposite if you're in Asia. The apologies, the period after Raijin enters meltdown is a period of 24 hours in which the Titan enters a very particular state called meltdown. In meltdown, the pulse, the repulsion pulse, no longer applies, but the anti-guardian field still does apply. It's an interesting state in which it's very possible to continue rescue operations, if that's your thing. It's also very possible to scavenge materials from the Titan if you're after any materials for either synthesis purpose or engineering purposes. Meltdown is a good time to go and gather those materials. It's also a great time to hunt Orthruses, which spawn essentially non-stop from the maw, and what is used to be one of the most lucrative activities in the game. Now it's somewhat less lucrative after they adjusted the payout of the Orthruses, but it's still quite fun of an experience. If you're hunting in Meltdown, be aware of the NPCs. I'm not going to say anything about the NPCs, because last time I said something about the NPCs, I ended up on trial and it was huge drama, so I'm not going to do that again. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I might link a video in the comment section below. But anyhow, Meltdown hunting is an activity best done in a small group, because if you go in a large group, you will more often than not aggro the entire instance and make the experience impractical. After the meltdown, there's a period of 24 hours, and then after the 24 hours elapse, and apologies, I deeply apologize for my cough. As some of you may know, I'm still recovering from an illness, so bear with me. After the meltdown, timer counts down, and that will be visible on the galaxy map. Titan Raijin will go boom in a very big and fanciful explosion, which people typically gather for a watch party. And if you haven't experienced yourself in game, I highly encourage you to try, because it looks awesome. So this is the sequence of events, and this is what to expect as far as the timeline pertaining to the demise of Titan Raijin. Where can you, and broadly, how do you participate? Like, you can find Titan Raijin on the galaxy map, so that's the easy part. You'll need a place to park and base your ships for Titan assault and Titan bombing operations. My personal carrier, the XSF Noah, is parked right next to Raijin in Pegasus Sector IHU B32, but the reality is you can really park on any XSF or AXI carrier. Or if you're lucky, you might be able to find a parking spot for your own carrier. There's also a few stations that are not too far, but for the purpose of Titan bombing, carriers tend to be closer, and personally, I feel somewhat more convenient, as they also tend to stock anti-Xeno modules and weapons in case you need them. You can participate in either the Anti-Xeno Initiative private group or the Xeno Strike Force private group. Both are private groups that are open to the community, as in they're auto-accept. Like, you can just send a request to the commander. These are actual in-game accounts with that name. You can send an in-game request from the social menu in the game to join the private group of either, and you will be automatically accepted without any kind of step in between. And at that point, you can join that private group and play in one of those two private groups. Noting that both private groups have rules against ganking. So if that's your playstyle, those are two options that you have to find other commanders and participate in this activity playing within a private group. You can also try your hand in open, noting that in open there is no such protection against ganking, so you may be required to defend yourself from hostile commanders. If that's your style of play and that's what you're looking for as an experience, then open is great. Or you can play in solo. Obviously in solo, you're alone, so it's kind of a different experience. So, we talked about the where, now let's talk about the how. The best weapons currently in the game for the purpose of thermal core bombing are large Guardian shards, the old ones, not the Mbuni modified ones, but the old large shards, which have been engineered by Ramta to resist the anti-Guardian field or anti-Guardian zone. These tend to be quite material intensive, however, as far as modification is concerned, so not everybody's going to have these. But if you have them, these are your best weapons to use for Titan bombing. If you don't have them, then you should use your best anti-Xeno missile rack. If you received the Cirrus missile racks from the community goal of the Battle of Shindeads, those are great, you should use those. If you don't have those, and you can afford their cost in materials, then you should purchase enhanced anti-Xeno missile racks, which are available at Rescue Megaships just for credits. And those are going to be your best thermal core bombing weapons overall. In terms of ships, the Crate Mark II is probably the most versatile bomber. It's a ship that combines the most damage with the most survivability overall. So if you're not particularly experienced, it would be the ship we would highly recommend. And again, we have several videos in this channel with builds for Crate Mark IIs in a Titan bomber configuration. So I'll link some of these in the description below. But by now, I think those builds are pretty well established in the community. The Titan Mark II hits even harder, so it'll do more damage, but it is a lot more squishy. So once you get some experience and you know what you're doing, you may want to graduate to the Titan Mark II, because it does allow you to hit harder. It does allow you to solo the Titan, as in it does allow you to do 100% core damage per cycle entirely on your own. So it's really hard. However, it is very squishy, and until you get kind of a sense of like how things work, you may end up with more rebuys in the Titan Mark II than in the Crate Mark II. The actual process of bombing the Titan and getting the most vents in a single cycle, and then doing the most damage in that particular cycle to the core, is beyond the purpose of this video. I have described quite in detail a series of tips and tricks with regards to the actual mechanics of approaching Titan bombing, in particular to stay inside and high and basically move laterally while hitting the vents without nearly even looking at them, because your torpedoes are turreted, so you can start locking them and then look away and keep moving. But this whole mechanics is beyond the purpose of this video. I will link a timestamp video below with tips and tricks section if you're interested in that. If you're interested on tips and tricks specifically with the mechanics of how to go about vent bombing the Titan, I would highly encourage you to at least watch that section of that video, because I go into quite a bit of depth with regards to how to get the most out of any ship really in a bombing run. So what else is there to know specifically as you approach the assault to Titan Raijin? What you should know is that killing scythes are the hunters, so the smaller variants of Thargoids compared to interceptors, but larger than scouts, with like the kind of blade shape and the two kind of mandibles up front that have limpets that go about and try to steal pods or other human cargo. So killing those in Titan space crashes the game for other players in the instance and potentially yourself, as in it hard locks the game. You're forced to task kill it. It's a major bug in the game. We made it present through front developments. So far, I've done nothing about it. The only workaround is to not destroy scythes in Titan space. There is no other workaround. So if you're in a group and you're in Titan space, do not destroy scythes, or people will hard crash, and then you'll be placed outside of a maelstrom, and you'll have to make your way back through the caustic cloud. It sucks so many dimensions. So don't do that. Do not shoot scythes while assaulting Raijin. Leave them alone. Completely ignore them. If you really must, get their attention, get their aggro, and drag them outside of to the asteroids and away from the action. But do not destroy them. So that's one thing to know. A second thing to know is if there is more than one person shooting torpedoes at vents, the instance tends to bug out. So it is recommended that you have a single dedicated or designated bomber, vent bomber, in any particular instance, as that leads to things being more stable. It's not strictly necessary, but it is something kind of highly recommended. And then meanwhile, I'm getting like a sun reflection, so that my video is doing odd things with my kind of background. So I'm kind of like doing very weird things, but it is what it is. If people join or leave the instance while the actual vent bombing cycle and core and thermal core damage cycle is ongoing, the instance tends to bug out. So if you're in a smaller instance where you're coordinating in voice with some friends, for example, it is highly recommended that you coordinate when people join and leave to happen after the Taurus is over and before people start bombing vents, as that is what typically results in the most stable instance. Again, not strictly required, but one recommendation to get a better experience and get things more stable. By the way, this also applies to dying and exploding. If you happen to blow up, wait until you press the continue button on the screen, which then sends you to the rebuy screen, until the cycle is over. Because until you hit the continue button, the game will technically keep you in the instance. It will only pull you out of the instance once you click the continue button, and then it sends you to the rebuy screen and pulls you out of the instance. So even if you blow up, you have an opportunity to not screw everything up for everybody else by waiting until you hit that continue button. So yeah, that's another way to avoid bugs in the overall instance. If you're fighting solo, it is generally recommended to try and get the Titan back to green alert state in between each bombing cycle. That is why our bombers generally do not kit a thermal vent beam. You all have seen people who constantly use a thermal vent beam on the hull of a Titan to stay cold. If you're in a large instance where getting the Titan back to green state is effectively impossible, that is fine. But if you're solo, the only thing you're really going to accomplish by using your thermal vent beam is to keep the Titan in orange alert state, which means patrols don't leave, which means scouts don't leave, which means after 2 or 3 cycles, you're going to have scouts and patrols everywhere, and your life is going to be incredibly hard. However, if you don't use a thermal vent beam, and you rely just on heat sinks to stay cold, and then you kind of retreat to the asteroid field after the Taurus, and wait a moment for the Titan to cool off and calm down, the Titan will go back to green alert state, and relatively quickly at that point, and in green alert, it will tell all the patrols and all the scouts to leave, which clears up the instance for you and makes it a lot easier to keep going. So if you're solo, highly recommend it that you try to get the Titan to green state in between different attack cycles. Another thing to know is that Thargoids do get harder as hearts go down. Once you're down to like 3, 2, 1 hearts, you start seeing Hydras in there, you start seeing Hunters everywhere. It does get harder. So not that there's much to do about it, it's just something to be aware of. Like, set your expectation that the fight gets harder as you go on, and the Titan starts losing hearts. And finally, you never know what's going to happen in life, right? You never know if like you have to be out of town or someone needs your attention outside of game. So get your 2 million in bonds now. Now is the time to do it. Between now and the weekend, really, is the time to get your 2 million in bonds. You don't have to wait until Thursday. You can get 2 million bonds in one cycle if you have a good ship, or in two if you have a decent ship. That's all you need. And then you got your 2 million in bonds. You know that you've kind of done what you need and registered to get your rewards. Whatever happens, happens. If you're able to participate in the development campaign, great. It's also good money. But if you're not, you're still going to get your rewards and you're not going to miss out. So get your 2 million in bonds in now. Finally, as far as Titan rewards are concerned, you will get the next ship kit and paint job depending on the number of Titans that you've been participating in. So if this is your first one, you get the bleached Chieftain. If it's your second, you get the bleached Cobra Mark III. Third gets the rusted Crate Mark II. Fourth gets the rusted Anaconda. Fifth gets a silvered Cutter. Sixth get the silvered Crate Mark II. And Frontier still hasn't announced what the rewards will be for the 7th Titan for people who got all 7. But if they follow anything like the pattern of the rewards so far, it will be a gilded paint job, probably for the Anaconda or the Cutter, or maybe the Cobra Mark III or Chieftain, like we don't really know. But it's probably going to be a gilded paint job for one of those. And they should be announcing it in the next few days, like what the specific rewards will be, in addition, obviously, to an additional star on your decal pertaining to your number of Titan assaults. In addition to these rewards, you will get 400 arcs, and if you're in the top 10% of each heart in terms of damage done, or 200 arcs if you're in the top 50%, or if you're in the any percent, as you did any damage to the heart in that particular window, you'll get 100 arcs. So if you are in the top 10% for all 8 hearts, you can get as much as 2,400 arcs overall, as in 8 times 400. In addition to the arcs rewards, you will get credit rewards in terms of damage done. Full thermal core will be worth 28 millions per cycle once the Titan becomes vulnerable. It is currently worth 2 millions per cycle until Thursday. Note this gets divvied up between contributing commanders. So if you have an instance of 4 commanders and you all do the same amount of damage, you would all get up to 7 million per cycle. This is what I personally don't like in terms of the core mechanics, because it actually is an incentive to do this solo instead of as a group. Because honestly, now that you can do 100% damage solo, the only thing you're doing by going in a group is dividing up credits among group and reducing progress, by the way, because each and every one of you individually could probably contribute more progress than you're doing in a group. Unless you're really in an underpowered ship, then sure, there's safety in numbers. That's it. If you have questions beyond what this briefing contains on the Assault of Titan Raijin, by all means, leave them in the comments below. If you care to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell button, it really helps us notice your support, and it's very welcome. So thank you for considering that. And glory to mankind. Commander Mechan, over and out.